On the eve of Yom Kippur, as the sun was going down, the synagogue filled with worshippers anticipating the opening prayer of this most solemn day, the Kol Nidre. But the rabbi was nowhere to be found. The following story is told about Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salanter, the 19th century rabbi famously associated with Musar, a movement dedicated to the highest standards of human ethical behavior. One year, on the eve of Yom Kippur, as the sun was going down, the synagogue filled with worshippers anticipating the opening prayer of this most solemn day, the Kol Nidre. But the rabbi was nowhere to be found. The congregation waited and waited. The sun slowly sank behind the hills, but still no rabbi. Frantically, they sent a search party to look for him, but none could find the elusive rabbi. Finally, one of the searchers, passing a small home, heard a familiar voice. He looked through the open window, and there, seated on a chair, was the rabbi with a swaddled infant on his shoulder, humming a lullaby. Shh! The rabbi put his finger to his lips, signaling the intruder to be silent. This baby has been crying for over an hour, and I only just managed to put him to sleep. What had transpired was this. The infant's parents, keen not to miss the synagogue service, left the sleeping infant alone. On his way to synagogue, the rabbi heard the baby's cries, and seeing there was no one else to attend to the poor child, he did so himself. What else could I have done? Asked the rabbi. Left a poor crying infant alone? This sweet story packs an ethical punch. The congregation, including the infant's own parents, assume that on this most sacred of days, nothing is more important than prayer. The rabbi's actions indicate otherwise. There's nothing more sacred than alleviating another human being's suffering. God, it seems, is closer to the rabbi tending to a vulnerable infant than to the congregation joining in prayer in the synagogue. This notion of God being found in acts of kindness has deep Jewish roots. In the Haftarah reading of Yom Kippur morning, we intone the words of the prophet Isaiah, who lambasts his people for prioritizing ritual offerings and fasting over the ethical treatment of human beings. Is such the fast I desire? A day for men to starve their bodies? Is it bowing the head like a bulrush and lying in sackcloth and ashes? Do you call that a fast? A day when the Lord is favorable? No, this is the fast I desire. To unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. It is to share your bread with the hungry and to take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, to clothe him and not to ignore your own kin. Separated by more than 2,000 years, Isaiah's passionate plea and Rabbi Israel Salanter's defiant gesture speak to the same deep religious sensibility. God is much less interested in our prayers than in the way we treat one another. I heard the story of Rabbi Salanter as a child, but it wasn't until I became a congregational rabbi myself that I came to appreciate just how radical the story really is. Imagine a contemporary congregation on the eve of Yom Kippur, in hushed anticipation for the start of Kol Nidre. Only the rabbi hasn't yet made an appearance. Imagine how individual congregants would react to the rabbi's tardiness. Then imagine, after much waiting, the service goes on without the rabbi. And only at the end of the service does the rabbi show up with the excuse that on the way to synagogue, the rabbi encountered a hungry and disoriented homeless person and took them to the nearest shelter and only left after being assured the person was safe and would be looked after. I don't know many congregations that would accept this as an excuse for not showing up on time to synagogue on the most important day of the year, when everyone expects the rabbi to deliver an elegant and evocative sermon. I imagine it would be a matter of discussion for the synagogue board, and then the rabbi would be lucky to get away with only a reprimand. It's one thing to share heartwarming stories like this. It's quite another to live by them. Israel Salanter had the courage of his convictions, but his community also had the remarkable ability to appreciate the valuable lesson he taught. So for us, the question is, what sort of sacred communities will we build? And how, through these communities, will we live our deepest values?